Hi, my name is Rina Schutte and I am a cello teacher. I absolutely love my job and I am especially very passionate about teaching younger children. So, when I was planning this presentation, there were a lot of things going through my mind, a lot of ideas that I wanted to explore. So, I was talking to a friend in the music industry, and after discussing my ideas with him, he asked me, well, what's the point of music lessons anyway? And I thought that is quite a valid question. At first, you might think the answer is quite obvious, but the more you talk to people, the more you realize that people have different goals and ideas about music lessons. For example, the child, the parent, and the teacher might all have completely different goals for the music lesson or even for the entire teaching plan. A few years ago, when I had just begun my career as a music teacher, I had a student who was extremely talented. His oral skills were out of this world, his sight reading was excellent, he played with so much musicality and sensitivity. So he ticked all the boxes. So, being a young and inexperienced music teacher, the first thing that I thought about was how well he would excel in competitions and exams. So after I've entered him for his first national music competition, the mom and the child came to see me. They were both having second thoughts about taking part in the competition. The student loved his cello, he loved the lessons, but he didn't love the idea of competing against other children. He told me that he wanted to play cello to make music with other children, not play against them. I thought this was a very mature argument coming from a 10-year-old, and it has taught me a very valuable lesson. Music lessons are not about the teacher and what the teacher wants to achieve. It's not even about the goals of the parents. It's all about the student and what is best for this individual. Teachers working with beginner students have got such a delicate job. We have to find a path between teaching our students the correct technique on the one hand, but also teach them to enjoy playing the instrument and playing music. To achieve this, I think a music teacher needs to be very creative in lessons and be aware of the different personalities and the different goals that students have. The famous string pedagogue Phyllis Young said the following: "String teaching is difficult, even under the best conditions. We are dealing with an art involving human beings, no two of which are alike." I agree fully with that sentiment. You cannot expect the same from every student, and you cannot teach every student by using the same approach. This is also because not all the students have the same goals, and those goals don't necessarily match the goals of the parents and the teachers. Some children want to play cello to make music with their families and friends. Others want to improvise in church. Some want to compose, others want to play cello in a band. Of course, for them to achieve all of these goals, we need to give them the tools, teach them the correct technique and posture, and build appropriate repertoire. But why do we so often leave out teaching them to be free, to compose, to improvise and experiment? Why do we instead endlessly pursue competitions, certificates, and measured excellence above all else? Is this really the reason why someone would want to play the cello? Competitions and examinations aren't the ultimate point of a child taking music lessons. After all, composer Bela Bartok famously said that competitions are for horses, not for artists. I also often fall into this trap. I enter many students for exams and competitions because I see their potential. But this is not necessarily what the student wants, nor the best way to ensure a lifelong engagement with music. I think we always need to evaluate each individual situation. If the student wants to compete or enter exams, then it's fine, as long as the end goal stays the same, to have a lifelong enjoyment of music. Competitions and exams should never overshadow the enjoyment of music for the student. It's not worth it. Too often we hear of students that are terrified of playing because of too much pressure or bad experiences in form of examinations and competitions. Often students are pressurized by parents and teachers, or sometimes the cycle of competitions and exams year in and year out is just the way we accept the business of having lessons. Another well-known example is the practice of the teacher handing out 3 exam pieces with prescribed scales, and this being the only thing that is done for an entire year. This risks giving children a negative experience of music, which can impact their willingness to carry on playing. What good are lessons if they turn children away from music? What is the point of learning to play an instrument if you only give it up the moment you don't have an examination or a competition to practice for? The ultimate goal of a child taking music lessons should be achieving lifelong engagement and enjoyment of music, even if the child will not become a professional musician. There are many approaches that teachers could use to ensure their students staying motivated and inspired. One way is to let them be creative from the very beginning, to let them use their own innate abilities. I have found that this can be achieved by doing free improvisation, playing other genres of music, singing and dancing, and even letting them compose their own music. Even in a structured lesson, packed with technical work, repertoire, and sight reading, I try to find time for something creative or alternative, something that is not part of the prescribed exam syllabus or competition requirements. I will show a few examples of what I sometimes do with my students in the lessons. So I get extremely excited about planning lessons for the very beginner. I personally think that the student as well as the teacher should have fun in the lessons. So I implement a lot of color, a lot of movement, a lot of dancing, singing. I especially think for the very young preschoolers, it's very important that they don't just sit behind the instrument, but that they clap rhythms, sing songs, and be stimulated at all times and have fun. So we normally start with the French rhythms. I think it's very important that students count right from the very beginning. And then I also have charts of the note names. So slowly but surely we get used to the note names, and then when they start playing their pieces, it's easier for them to recognize. I also find that the more colorful and bigger the charts are, the more excited they get. So then sometimes I also implement some string games by Phyllis Young. She's written a book, Playing the String Game. It's strategies for teaching cello and strings. It's a wonderful book, and she takes difficult concepts and turn it into games. But then on the other hand, I also feel it's very important for a teacher to explore and create their own ideas and own games and own strategies for teaching young students. The first video needs no introduction. Children love to create and use their imagination, and I think they need to embrace it. From a young age, we need to let them explore and play around and be free. I like to always ask them which sounds they prefer, and just to let them experiment with it.
Sounds like an old chain. Sounds like rain. Sounds like the wind. Sounds like a whale.
In the next example, one of my students will play a short snippet of one of her pieces she's currently busy composing. I think we as teachers really need to encourage students to compose and to create their own music. Some of my students have new pieces ready every week. Especially now with the lockdown, there was a lot of time for composition. But I also think we need to take time during the lessons and sit with them and explore possibilities and create music together. Now, my one student and I will demonstrate an exercise that we sometimes do before we start improvising. So I just play a phrase and he plays it back, I think it's very important to start doing this from a very young age so that they learn to use their ears. I have to say that, of course, for every one of these exercises that I'm doing, I also do a piece of sight reading because it sometimes happens that students then only rely on their ears and they need to read, of course.
Okay, Dirk, copy me.
Not everyone wants to play classical music all the time. A lot of my students like other genres like rock and jazz and pop. So the student in the next example came to me one day. She came for a lesson and she said to me, "Teacher, I know most of my pieces and my scales so well. I would really love to play this pop song." So she told me what the pop song was and I've arranged it for her. And I've also decided to keep it in the original key, which is the daunting key of D flat major, which she obviously hasn't done before. But this challenge has taught her new positions and new shifts, and now she can play it with the original track. These are just a few examples. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I think we as teachers need to allow ourselves to be more creative and also allow our students to be creative and explore their own artistic avenues. I really think that this should be implemented from the very beginning. The entire philosophy of music education should not exist simply for the sake of competitions and examinations. I think the goal of music lessons should be enjoyment above all else. I'm ending off with a quote once again from Phyllis Young. She says, "The teacher's end goal is to help other human beings learn how to express themselves through music, thereby enriching and coloring their entire lives."